Picture this, you're in Athens. The year is 399 BC. The city is buzzing, but not with excitement. There's a tension in the air. The most important trial in history is about to begin. And the man on trial, he's never written a word, never commanded an army, never held any real power, and yet his ideas are about to get him killed. This is the story of Socrates.
So what if the wisest person you know, the wisest person in the world, looked you in the eye and said, "I know absolutely nothing"? It sounds like a riddle, right? Well, this was the central paradox of Socrates. His entire life was one giant question. And that relentless, brilliant, and, let's be honest, infuriating questioning, it would become the very foundation of Western philosophy. But it's also the very thing that put him on trial for his life.
You know, our story here doesn't actually begin in a courtroom or with a crime. Nope, it starts at the most sacred place in the entire Greek world, the Oracle at Delphi. This is where a single divine prophecy would set Socrates on a collision course with his own city.
So his good friend Sheriphon goes to the temple, asks the oracle a question, and comes back with an absolute bombshell. The oracle's message? No one is wiser than Socrates. When Socrates heard this, he was just completely baffled. He was thinking, me? Wiser than everyone? That's impossible. I don't know anything important at all.
So what do you do with a divine riddle like that? Well, if you're Socrates, you launch a public quest. He decided the only way to figure this out was to go find someone, anyone in Athens, who was clearly wiser than he was. And get this, his mission wasn't to prove the oracle was right, he was trying to prove it was wrong.
And he was pretty methodical about it too. He went right to the top. He started questioning the people everyone just assumed were the wisest around. First, the politicians running the city. Then, the poets, who were seen as these divinely inspired geniuses. And finally, the craftsmen, the people who had actual practical skills. And after talking to all these experts, he uncovered a really startling truth. The politicians couldn't even define a basic concept like justice. The poets couldn't explain the meaning of their own beautiful poems. And the craftsmen? While they were experts at their craft, sure, but they wrongly thought that made them experts on everything else too. And that's when it finally clicked for Socrates. The oracle was right, just not in the way he expected. His wisdom wasn't in having all the answers. It was in being the only one who was truly aware of his own ignorance. So this realization, it changed everything. It gave him a brand new mission in life. He started calling himself the gadfly of Athens. You know, like a fly that stings a big, slow, lazy horse to get it to wake up and move. That horse was the state of Athens. Now, he didn't go around giving lectures or sermons. No, instead, he perfected this devastatingly effective way of just talking to people. His goal was never to win an argument. It was to go on a journey with someone, together, to find the truth by first clearing out all the junk, all the false beliefs, to make room for real understanding. His method was so simple, it was brilliant. First, he'd ask for a definition of some big idea, like courage. Then, with a few careful questions, he'd show you how your own logic had a flaw, a contradiction. And that would lead you to the state he called aporia, basically a state of productive confusion. That uncomfortable, humbling moment where you realize you don't actually know what you thought you knew. For Socrates, that was the real starting point for wisdom. And you've got to understand, for him, this wasn't some fun intellectual game. Not at all. Socrates believed that this process of constant self-examination, of questioning everything, it was the most important job a person has. To go through life without ever stopping to question your own beliefs, well, that wasn't really living at all. But, as you can probably guess, going around and making all the most powerful people in your city realize they're ignorant, well, it's a dangerous line of work. And in a city that was already reeling from one crisis after another, Socrates' constant questioning started to look less like a public service and a lot more like a threat. To really get what happened, you have to remember the atmosphere in Athens at the time. This was a traumatized city. They just lost a devastating 30-year-long war. They had been through a horrific plague, a series of political betrayals, and even lived under the brutal rule of a dictatorship called the 30 Tyrants. The city was paranoid, on edge, and desperately looking for someone to blame.
and Socrates was just too easy of a target. I mean, two of the most infamous people in recent Athenian history had been his students, Alcibiades, the general who betrayed Athens, and Critias, one of the leaders of the 30 tyrants. Now, was it fair? Probably not. But people started connecting the dots, seeing the terrible actions of the students as a direct result of the teacher.
So in 399 BC, it finally happened. 3 men brought formal charges against him. Officially, the charges were about disrespecting the gods and corrupting the city's young men. But underneath all that, the trial was really about one thing: fear. It was fear of new ideas, fear of questioning authority, and fear of one man who refused to back down.
So the trial that happened next wasn't just about one 70-year-old man. It was a historic showdown. It was a battle between an individual's right to think for himself and the power of a state that was gripped by fear.
His defense in court was absolutely audacious. Instead of begging for his life, Socrates basically argued that he was the best thing that ever happened to Athens. He claimed that by forcing everyone to examine their own lives and values, he was providing the greatest possible service. He wasn't a corrupter, he was a doctor for the city's soul.
And you know what? The jury of 500 citizens was completely torn. When they voted, they did find him guilty, but the margin was incredibly close. We're talking a swing of just 30 votes would have set him free. He had clearly gotten through to a lot of them. But then came the sentencing. They asked Socrates what he thought his punishment should be, and he, with maybe a bit of a smirk, suggested he should be rewarded with free meals for life at public expense. This was seen as the ultimate act of arrogance. The jury was insulted, and when they voted a second time on the death penalty, it wasn't close at all. So he spent his last month in prison. His friends were wealthy, and they easily arranged an escape plan, but he refused to go. He argued that he had lived his whole life benefiting from the laws of Athens, and he couldn't just abandon them when they turned against him. He had to obey the law, even an unjust one. And this right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the matter. Socrates didn't die for truth. He died because truth is dangerous. He showed the world that when you systematically challenge the comfortable beliefs of a society, especially a society that's afraid, you become a threat. You become the most dangerous thing there is. Even right up to the very end, after he drank the poison hemlock, he was an enigma. His last words were the strange request to his friend Crito to sacrifice a rooster to Asclepius, who was the god of healing. People still argue about what he meant, but a lot of people think he was trying to say that death itself was the cure for the sickness we call life. By choosing to die rather than be silent, Socrates made sure his ideas would live forever. His execution turned him from a local character into this immortal symbol of intellectual courage. And in doing so, he left us all with his most important, his most enduring challenge. The one question he believed was the only one that truly mattered. Which of your own beliefs have you never ever dared to question?